Good morning, everyone. So, Drew doesn't like it when I say this, but there's part of church that's a business, and that's what I'm here to talk about today. So,
Bishop Kennedy of Hawaii, some years ago now, and there's a main street in Hawaii, Fort Street, which is the business center of Honolulu. He would often say, Fort Street needs more of the church. And the church needs more of Fort Street. So I agree with you, and I'm grateful for the work and leadership that Gregg brings.
So what we want to talk about today is how we blend the business of church with our initiative to excel in love. So that being said, let's kind of talk about the budget. So first off, we usually talk about the actuals, looking past, and I think the spirit of today is really kind of looking forward. So we will talk about 2021 actuals, but let's talk about the budget for 2022 kind of going forward. So let's just make sure we get everyone grounded that this budget was prepared specifically, okay, to enact the vision that Father Drew and the vestry have been talking about over the last really almost 3 years. So what you're seeing on the page up here is this more or less coming to life. I know there's going to be a lot of questions around it, probably some hard ones, but we're here to answer. We want to be transparent about it. That is, Father Drew, Betsy, John said, we're ready to move forward into the next century of Christ Church. So, looking at things, revenue. I'm sorry, let's go back here real quick. Just on the summary, revenue looks good, increasing. The problem is the revenue is increasing by other funds other than contributions. Expenses, they've gone up by $455,000 a year. Most of those expenses are around some of the new positions that Betsy had talked about. We'll discuss a little bit more. And then the other thing I just kind of want to make sure that we get grounded in is there is extra money left from the payroll protection program. Recall in 2020, we applied, we actually received $195,000 from the government, along with other, I'll say, religious institutions in the Detroit area. We've used 45 of that, and so we have 150,000 remaining that we'll be deploying kind of here going forward. Next slide, please. Getting into some of the details. You'll see in the annual report, there's also, a lot of these details are in for you to kind of thumb through at home over some coffee or maybe something stronger. Unrestricted contributions, they've gone down by $47,000 a year. And that's just a matter of we've had folks transfer, we've had deaths in the parish, and quite frankly, giving's down. I mean, there's no other way around it. So there's a reduction there. If you look at programs and services, that's actually an increase. That's Parents' Day Out, things along those lines. Investment and other income. Actually, I think this is a little bit of a shining star. What this is primarily is Christ Church owns royalties in a few oil wells in West Texas. With oil prices going up, before we actually did that, I think we're going to see those royalties increasing. So hopefully, we're going to see that as a positive, so there's a little bit of flexibility. Our endowment draw. Now remember, part of the commitment that we've made is we've actually increased our annual draw from 4% to 5%. There's also a contribution from the Tannehill Foundation for $300,000 in there. And if you think about it, of that, and it's a big number, $630,000 is a large number, increasing by 83. About $62,000 of that is that increase in the draw I talked about. And then probably the other $20,000, $21,000 is off of investment income that we're earning from our endowment. Net asset release, basically these are restricted funds that we kind of hold until expenditures that they're earmarked for are actually incurred, and then we pay for that. And then conservation trust. These are dollars that are set aside specifically for major projects. Like, for example, last year we had to replace the boiler. Those are monies that are used for that, just ongoing maintenance kind of within the church. So let's go to the next slide. How about that? Actually, Diane, did we miss a slide? Okay. Before we talk about expenses, I want to just kind of park again on the positions that Betsy kind of talked about. Youth, children, youth and family ministry, when we talk about associate for Christian Foundation, a church school coordinator, you know, these are really essential positions that are important. They're fundamental to Christ Church as we look at the next generation going into the next 100 years. Betsy also mentioned about membership or member engagement and care. That's not just necessarily looking at new members, because again, I think when we're increasing our investment in youth and family, I think that's going to bring in younger families into Christ Church. As Betsy said, there are a lot of older faces here, and we want to bring new ones in that will continue to help grow going into the next century. So when we look at membership engagement, okay, as Betsy mentioned, it's not just new members, we want to make sure they're engaged, but existing parishioners, making sure that you're getting what you need out of everyday parish life. Facilities management. You're going to see on our balance sheet, I believe, that this building asset liability is almost $17 million. It's old. We had to replace the boiler, got a slate roof. This lady right here, Diane Ward, she has been acting as a facilities manager as well as my co-worker as far as finances, and we really just need to beef this up. It really needs to be a job that, well, it just takes a lot of work, and I think we need to invest in that because it is an asset on our balance sheet. And then finally, we're looking at some incremental investments around our audiovisual work, things like that. I just also want to make sure that everyone understands that we're going to be good stewards of this money. Okay, so we budgeted these new positions. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to hire them all this year. And quite frankly, a word I like to use in my business a lot is optimize. So I'd like to make sure that as we're looking to hire new people, that maybe we can get a twofer. Maybe there's someone who can do facilities management as well as some other things. So we're looking to try to make sure we blend these positions together as possible to make sure that we're smart with our money. Okay, back to expenses. So salaries and benefits, really, you know, almost 65% of that $455,000 is around the increase for those new positions. I just want to reiterate it again, we're going to be smart about how we hire. If we can sort of blend some of these positions together, we're going to do that to make sure that we're smart. Professional services increasing, obviously choir, things along those lines. Jumping down to apportionment. A lot of you might not realize this, but just the same way we ask you to tithe to Christ Church, Christ Church has to give money to the Diocese of Michigan, okay? So that's done on a rolling 3-year average. And so actually it's gone down a little bit this year because our revenues have gone down. I hate to say that I want to see expenses increase, but I would like to see this actually increase, because if this is increasing, that means that we're getting more money in the door through Christ Church. So that's just a little highlight there. General expenses, basically that's a lot of utilities, insurance, communications. The next will be going up by $10,000 as well. Next slide. So just kind of want to park on this one more time. You can see that our net income deficit is actually $568,000. That's offset a little bit by the payroll protection plan funds that we're going to be using in reserve. And I got to think right now, everyone's saying, how the heck are we going to pay for all this? I know certainly when we started this journey a few years ago, that was first and foremost on the top of my mind. So Diane, if we could go to the next slide. So first off, one of the ways we're going to pay for it is using some of the monies out of our existing endowment. In Drew's sermon today, he talked about Christ's love and giving it. Quite frankly, we're sitting on a lot of Christ's love right here. In the last probably 5-6 years, you'll see that that endowment has grown by close to $3.5 million. Certainly, and you know, Drew mentioned that we started talking about this in 2020. Actually, Drew, I think it was 2019. It was before that. And if you look from 2019 into the year-end 2021, our endowment has grown by close to $2.4 million. This is money that we're sitting on. Now, it's great. Look, again, this is the business side of me. I'm looking just like with our own portfolios. I'm looking and saying, man, this is doing pretty good. But again, for us to do good, for us to excel in love, I think it's time for us to unlock some of these investments, okay? It's what we've agreed to is over really kind of the next 5 years to lean hard into this. So I'm just being transparent. Probably for the next 2 years, you're going to see withdrawals coming out of this investment at similar type of levels until we sort of get the next phase up and running. So let's talk about what those next phases are. Betsy, I'm going to use your point as far as early childhood development. I think our vision is that is going to be hopefully a profit center. Okay, so we're looking at increased monies coming in from that. Part of our youth and family ministry is to bring new families in. Okay, we're looking at increased growth from new members. Honestly, and I'll just say it, we're also looking for increased giving from folks in this room as well. We need to have that. We're also, again, how we're going to pay for it. We did increase the grant from 4%, again, up to 5%. That's going to be responsible for some of the funding as well. And then we talked about a capital campaign. So what we're looking at doing is looking at trying to have a capital infusion into our endowment that'll help kind of prop up future investments. Because as I said, and everyone understands, we're taking money out of this now. That's money that is not going to be growing for us in the future. So what we're trying to do is bring in incremental revenues as well as through a course of several other activities we're looking at, build back up what our endowment is. Next slide, just real quick, talking about the endowment. Again, the year-to-date return this year was 12.5%. It's a little bit below what the benchmark is. As part of being good stewards of our endowment, we have taken it upon ourselves, the investment committee, to just kind of refresh things. We've been using the Baird Group for almost 20 years. I'm not saying that they have not done a good job, but we've solicited proposals from, I think, Drew, Diane, 7, 9 other providers. We're sort of casting against what they could do versus what Baird is. I'm not saying we're leaving Baird, but we just, as I said, want to make sure we're getting the best value, and we want to see this endowment grow. And again, we want to be good stewards of it. So, just real quick, finishing things up on the balance sheet, you can see that our net assets have increased by $1.7 million. Other thing I want to make sure we kind of point out is in 2020, you can see that there was that $195,000 on the balance sheet. That's been moved to the income statement since it's been forgiven. And only other, I think, worthy piece here is that we had an audit done of our financials by Capuchin, and there were no problems there. And certainly if anyone would like to see what the audit results were, you're more than welcome to that. Let's talk a little bit about actuals when we look at the income statement. It was actually, it was a wash. It was from what we had actually budgeted to what the actuals were. That's good news. Next slide. Just talking about revenue, you can see that contributions were down. 2020 was actually a banner year, and I know we talked a little bit about this before. Considering everything that was going on with COVID, the contributions from the parish reaching out, spectacular. Unfortunately, we did not have quite that level of success in 2021. Hopefully with some of the initiatives we're looking at in 2022 will be a better year. And then finally, just on the expense side, I don't think there's anything here that is necessarily earth-shattering or worthy of any other comment, other than I said we finished really kind of with a net at the end. I think really that's all I had for today. Drew, would you like to close, or how would you like to proceed?
I think two things. I'm going to add, stay up for just a moment. I have one piece, I think, of significance regarding our revenue change from 2020 to 2021. We had two significant donor households who had changes. One who had a death in the family, another who has moved out of Grosse Pointe into another state. I won't say much more because we'll start figuring out who's where. But those two households represented a $70,000 pledging base in 2020. that was not available to us in 2021. And so when we look at our giving both year over year from 2020 to 2021, we actually see, minus those gifts, we were on par. So I want to celebrate alongside all that Gregg said about the importance of our ministry and our support. But I also want to celebrate the strength of our giving in this past year. We have a significant gap to cover. We have a significant investment to make, both from the vestry, but also from us. And so we will have to lean into that work together. I want to pause my comments, and I think now would be a good time to hear from Gregg and questions.
I just have one other thing. Speaking of celebrating,
Yeah.
you know, again, I know this is the dull part of the meeting, okay, but no one kind of looked at the balance sheet and asked me why the heck we have like $1 million in cash sitting in Chase. Well, speaking of celebrating generosity, we received a gift of $500,000 at the end of this year. Again, that was just sort of talking with the parishioners, many that we deal with on a regular basis. Drew kind of sort of previewing some of this. We were very, very blessed and excited about having someone just sort of all of a sudden jumpstart with what we're already starting. So we don't actually have $1 million sitting in the Chase account. That $500,000 has been moved into Baird. So again, just another thing to kind of celebrate as we think about things.
I think it's a good time